Hey everybody, welcome to, what is this show? Directorpiece Theater.
Yeah.
I'm Abe Epperson. This is Adam over here.
That's me.
What's up, Adam?
I'm Adam, and
it's
I'm
his
over
episode.
Here. Ooh.
And it's an Adam
episode
show, baby. Yeah, and it's so here's the thing. You were telling me that we're going to be talking about Snatch today, right?
Yes, we are.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And so is your theory about how good Brad Pitt's abs look in this movie?
They should be. We could do a whole full hour on those abs. He looks so shredded.
I love how twice in this movie, I mean, for reasons, because like he's a boxer or whatever.
Right, of course.
He just pops his shirt off. They're just like, yeah, just pop it off.
He has
it's just like half of his scenes.
It
Three
seems,
scenes.
Yeah,
4
that's right.
scenes I
maybe more.
Because when his mom dies,
his shirt's off. It's like shirt, and then they also get pretty nice crotch shot in the briefs. Yeah, it definitely felt like a role that he wanted carved out for himself, right? Like it was such a Brad Pitt role.
Way. It's such a Brad Pitt role.
Yeah,
like it's like 12 Monkeys Brad Pitt too. Because he's just he's just a wild man. He wants to be a wild man.
Yeah.
He's like, I can do anything.
I actually think these are the roles that are his best roles. When he's a character actor and not a leading man? Yeah, I think that's what is in his DNA.
You're speaking my language, baby.
Yeah, I think he's when he gets to be like let off the hook of carrying a movie, he actually is so good at enhancing a movie by being a fun side character. He's so good at that.
I mean, Brad from Burn After Reading.
Yeah, oh my God, right? Incredible.
My God.
Like this is a great role for him.
Brad?
Yeah, I think it is Brad. Like that movie, he's great. Honestly, he's great in Ocean's 11 as sort of second banana.
He's just a quiet, like weird ninja in that movie.
Yes, right.
He's just in the background all the time,
right? Eating stuff and knowing it's funny that he's eating stuff. Right, exactly. Yeah. He actually is fairly convincing as a boxer in this movie.
Yeah, it's weird.
Yeah, it is weird. It also his piece. My favorite joke of the movie now, having seen it 15 times, maybe more, is there's that line that Jason Statham says to Tomei, who's the actor, I forget his name. He says, "Did you understand a single word he said?" And then it cuts back to Brad Pitt and the laugh that he's doing with his friend, just this laugh like he knows he's doing a trick.
He's like, "Yeah, I got
it's
you,
so good.
And you see me, but you can't do anything."
Yeah.
It's fucking over. Bitch.
Amazing laugh.
Yeah,
just really warmed your heart.
It's great.
Yeah,
it's great.
It really is.
There's so much. There's so much joy in his performance, which is like a darker performance too. He's also asked to be have real vengeance in his eyes and stuff.
Yeah. I mean, it's a dark movie.
Brad Pitt's name in Burn After Reading is Chad, not Brad.
Either of
which
those
is the
good.
Same.
Yeah,
they're
the
same.
same. Yeah, I agree.
Sorry to all the Chads and Brads out there trying to shirk the other's name off their good name.
You could use them interchangeably.
The deal.
Yeah, it's like John and Jack. You can do Brad and Chad are interchangeable.
Brad and Chad are interchangeable. Yeah. You heard it here first.
Whatever one you want.
Yeah, but we're not here to talk about Brad Pitt all the time.
Not entirely.
But we are here to talk about Snatch.
Yeah.
Which is
a pretty fun movie.
Adam's favorite topic, you old horn dog.
My favorite. It is my favorite. I'm constantly bringing it up on streams and when you and I are just hanging out. It's like, hey, remember Snatch? That was that's something.
You do that a lot.
Yeah, I do. Hey, so did you watch Snatch in a theater?
I can't recall.
I did.
I think so. I think so.
Yeah, I saw this in a theater. I was the perfect age to watch it, which was, I think, 18, I want to say. And this movie was like a spiritual home run for a young man at that time.
Oh, yeah?
Oh, yeah. Everybody loved this fucking movie. It was for teenagers. It's perfect for them. Mm-hmm. It's not as good as I remember it, but it's probably the reason that Guy Ritchie has gone on to direct, over a dozen films.
Right. He did Lock, Stock, and then he did this, and then Matthew Vaughn left, or I think he left after like
Swept Away. He left after Swept Away, which we're going to talk about in a second here.
And then we're like, wait, maybe it's Matthew Vaughn who's good.
That's right.
Oh, you're going to talk about
I got that. Yeah, shit. I got that in here. You're totally right. Hey, so honest question. If I tell you now that we're going to see a movie and that movie is directed by Guy Ritchie, what are your expectations at this point?
Well, I've talked a lot about Guy Ritchie because I am constantly talking. So you probably know, but I'm going to get...
Surprise me.
I'm going to say, British hooligans, crime.
Okay.
Fast editing and music, montage, heavy amount of montage, cheap kind of Three Kings-esque camera, like David O. Russell run and gun.
Yeah.
Like the Sabotage video.
Yes, it is very much like that.
Which is like Spike Jonze, I believe. So he kind of came out of that like irreverent punk model. And then he got older and then he made, I don't know, movies about wizards and shit.
Yeah, he made sort of regular movies. Like I would argue...
Oh, the Sherlock Holmes too.
Yeah, that's right. I would argue that at this point, Guy Ritchie is not a predictor of any particular quality for a film. Like right now, in 2022. Like what you said is true of him in the era in which Snatch came out. But now 20 years later, I don't know that we know what the movie is going to be. Is it going to be good? What's it going to be about? We don't even know. And even if I told you it was a crime movie, even that isn't really a guarantee.
That's not true. Yeah. Because like King Arthur wasn't a crime movie.
Right. That's right. Well, and I'm saying like even movies that he made after he did, even movies that he made after Snatch, like Revolver, weren't so good. You know,
Rock and Rolla.
Yeah, that was okay, right? So
wasn't that him?
It was him. He's sort of bizarrely one of the most successful directors and yet least dependable directors in Hollywood. And by dependable, I don't necessarily mean that that he always makes a bad film. Like, I don't mean good or bad even necessarily. I mean that, like, I don't know what the film will be based on his involvement.
Not recently. Like, once he hit mainstream with Sherlock Holmes, I think he was just like, I can do any movie now, baby.
I mean,
it's big.
It's funny that you say that because
I'm going to do Aladdin.
Which he did, and it made a lot of money.
He did Aladdin. He's the right man for the job.
Well, sometimes he makes money and sometimes he doesn't. That's the other thing is like you don't even know box office wise what you're going to get. Like the King Arthur series was supposed to be the first of 6 movies, and it performed so badly they canceled it. You know, so like in a sense, like Guy Ritchie kind of falls into what I would call the M. Night Shyamalan zone, where there was a lot of promise at the start, and then over time, he's just become a filmmaker who I don't know what to expect from. You know?
Yeah.
And like to your point, Guy Ritchie, when he like early in his career when he was making Lock, Stock, and Snatch, he was like, this guy's like a new voice, right? Like this guy is a revelation. And there sort of rose a debate about whether it was actually him or his producer, Matthew Vaughn, who were the real stylistic inspirations. Like for instance, when Matthew Vaughn won an award for Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels from like the British Academy or whatever, like he won Best New Filmmaker, and Guy Ritchie didn't. So that's interesting. And then Vaughn, I think, sort of to propagate this question, went on to make Layer Cake as a kind of rebuttal after Swept Away, because Swept Away is essentially a shipwreck of a movie.
Yeah, it's bad.
May or may not have been the result of Madonna yokoing that partnership. You know what I mean?
And what did Matthew Vaughn do?
He went on. So he did a bunch. He did Layer Cake, but then also
Layer Cake was immediately. Yeah.
He did Kick-Ass. He did, and then he got into the X-Men's.
X-Men's.
Yeah, he did a bunch of X-Men's.
And then he did Kingsman.
Yes, and then the Kingsman. So he's also been successful.
And the style is prevalent in both careers post their split. But
I'm ready.
that's interesting. Layer Cake and Kingsman
Mm-hmm.
are the more recent kind of God. Layer Cake is recent. I really
2004.
am old.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really old.
A couple years later.
But like, yeah. I'm just trying to point those ones out because they're very indicative of like the stylistic approach of Lock, Stock, and
100%.
Snatch is very far and away more accomplished in those films, which Vaughn had no Guy Ritchie to rely on.
So
whereas Guy Ritchie went other places, like he started focusing on camera more.
Right.
Like you remember
Yes, he
Sherlock
did.
Holmes with like the camera that you mount on the actor.
I do.
And he's like running through the forest and the slow motion with all the cannonballs. People have seen Sherlock Holmes, the Holmeses, like all that stuff, all those sequences were not the editorial driven.
Right. I think the question of which of them is actually the voice of Snatch is still not clear.
I think that they're probably like, it's got to be just a collaboration.
Absolutely.
And they both like it, right?
Absolutely. By the way, just an interesting fact for those of you who are ready to throw Guy Ritchie's talent out the window. Guy Ritchie also was the writer of every single movie he's ever done except the Sherlock Holmes movies. He wrote the screenplay. I know, that was a surprising fact to me. So like, you can't say
Artur style.
Yeah, you can't say the guy didn't have a voice in it. I mean, he wrote them and directed them. So. Mm-hmm. He's an enigmatic figure in that way. Here is a quote from him that describes his creative process, Abe. I hope you're ready.
Yes,
I hope you're ready.
This is the shit I want. Read into my veins.
My creative process has never been something I can put into words. It's very random, very scattered, and can sometimes lead down dark alleyways and dead ends.
Ooh, it's got everything. Is that the perfect quote?
It really is.
I think we found the perfect quote.
It really is. Doesn't it?
Can't even put it to words.
Yes.
And it gets dark, everybody. I want to let you know that this is a dark zone over here. And if you enter, I can't protect you.
That's right. Now
I'm Guy Ritchie.
Abe can't vouch for your safety now. We're going down some dark corridors, and they may be dead ends, friends. Now, before we get too like sarcastic about that quote, it is perfect. I think it's fair that like a normal reading of it is like that isn't that wild of a quote about creative processes. Like certainly most artists like to describe themselves in this enigmatic, and then it comes to me way. But like. Mm-hmm. My favorite thing about it is it's actually a perfect quote to describe Snatch. It's a great quote to describe what makes it so memorable. In fact,
random, scattered.
Yeah, it's random, it's scattered, it's shotgun blast, and
things just fizzle out because life. Yeah,
that's it.
Life is like, that person died, so all their shit that mattered. It doesn't matter
That's it
anymore.
now. Exactly.
Yeah, like Benicio. You're like invested in his like. So is he gonna gamble? Is he? Oh no, none of that shit happens.
He'll be a dead boy with a tea cozy on his head about 30 minutes into the movie. Yeah, and like so, I want to put everybody in a time and place to kind of appreciate where we were when Snatch came out. As a 20-ish-year-old, when I saw it for the first time, I thought this is one of the best movies I've ever seen.
Hell yes, dude.
Yeah, and like at 20, I had only seen maybe 4 of the AFI Top 100 lists, so like
like
I'm not informed. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you're like,
it's
like walking around. Have you guys seen movies?
They're fun.
You guys heard of movies?
They're fun.
Fuck, they are fucking cool.
They are so fun. Yeah, no. So I remember the conversation about Snatch at the time was very much about how stylish it is. It's a stylish film. Of course. And which of course, suggests that this mad creative process he has generates this stylish film. Now, Abe, as a 40-plus-year-old now, going back and rewatching it, I'll tell you, I don't think Snatch is that stylishly shot. I would say it's actually not that well shot or lit or designed. And by well, I don't mean competent. I mean, it's not like a dazzling display of craftsmanship in any of those fronts. Sometimes I would even describe it as pedestrian.
You sometimes get the feeling of like, we just need a room that looks like that. Yeah. Like, we just need a room. Yeah. A small room.
Just wherever. Let's put the boxing promoter's trailer in the middle of who knows where this room is. A bunker?
Yeah.
A concrete enclave.
What do we got?
Yeah. A wall? Exactly. A lot of times in this movie in particular, the coverage, and by which I mean, the angles that we're getting the drama from, is pretty functional. Like people...
It's like usually flat, right?
It's pretty flat. People walk into a scene and like we get, them walking up, usually a Steadicam. And then,
a lot of 50-50s.
Yeah, a lot of 50-50s. Then here's the shot of this side, here's the shot of that side, and we're done. They're not even necessarily composed well sometimes.
That's what I think. That's why I mentioned like Three Kings.
Yes, but Three Kings is...
David O. Russell also does that stuff.
Yeah, he's a lot better at it in that movie than Snatch, I would argue.
You love him.
I don't love him, but I love that movie. You're right about that, though. You're right about that. So then the question becomes, so how did we get this idea that Snatch is this super stylish film? And the answer, as Abe already alluded to, is that Guy Ritchie is actually a genius at a specific thing, and that thing is post-production techniques.
Damn, sorry to blow up your spot.
No, not a problem. Not a problem, because you were right.
You are right.
Yeah.
No, you.
No,
you are right.
Both of us. Many of his techniques are actually like way ahead of his time in Snatch, like the post-production stuff. So what I want to do is I want to talk about, what is it that he does that's so good? I want to talk about the difference between his post-production techniques and the cinematography stuff that normally you would see in a movie. And a little bit, just touch on the ways in which his film has influenced films that have come since, and just cinema since.
For sure.
So an argumentative person, let's say a YouTube commenter, might say, wait a minute, Adam, you just said this film isn't designed or well shot. What about the greatest character introduction sequence of all time that starts at the beginning of this movie and shows us every single character in it and was imitated 10,000 times by everybody with a camera?
Oh, where it does like credit, where it says like, this is who this person is.
It's fucking awesome.
Kind of.
It's
like he took Clue and said like, I'm going to do it like really stylish.
That's exactly what it's like.
Cool.
It is the cinematic equivalent of like a player's list in a Shakespeare play. Right? It's like, you're in for some good shit, and a lot of people have been trying to imitate it.
Damn, have we overused this trope to death.
But like, to be fair, it's his trope. Like Snatch basically invented this thing.
It comes from TV, does it not? Think of the A-Team and think of the credits sequence.
Totally.
Is he not doing that?
I think that he's doing it insofar as he's giving us a character introduction, so he didn't invent that. But for a movie, like, I don't think we're even expected to retain everyone's names here.
Yeah.
I think it's really more... Yeah, like it's not even...
stylistic. You're right. It's the stylistic, but it's more than that.
Yeah.
There's something that's uniquely his, and I think it's because it's like, when we choose to cut out isn't like conventional wisdom. It's his own brand of like sloppiness or something. And that is true. He is like, he said it himself. I can't put it into words.
Sometimes it's a dark corridor. No.
Yeah, sometimes.
So like,
an emo boy.
I mean, I think you're right. Like, I would say you're right that it's similar to a TV character intro in that it's doing the same thing. But most TV character intros are also like, and then Mr. T as Murdoch or whatever the name of the actor that character is.
And they like smile or doing something.
Yeah. So it's like telling you who the actors are and what characters they're playing. That's not what happens in Snatch. In Snatch, it's literally just, here's all the people that are going to be in the movie and sort of a picture of who they are. It's really more like a tone setter for who is each of these people, and then sort of woven together to give you like this is what this movie is going to be like. It's like a tone introduction more than anything else. And I would argue, so it rules. I saw it when I was in college. I saw it imitated 50 times. I saw it imitated in film school. It's a thing now, right? Like, it invented this thing. I would say that character intro sequence is actually the exception that proves the rule we're going to talk about. So most of the time in Snatch, the camera moves are not planned very carefully. This is the one time where it felt like he really carefully built a sequence with camera, like where the pans are, where the cuts are and stuff, and then built transitions into the camera placement and into the camera moves.
Oh yeah.
There are other examples of it. I'll give you a few. One is when we, like the beginning of the movie where we get the Orthodox Jewish guys who are going to end up robbing
perfect example.
Yeah. So like there's a really smart move there that is basically panning over 6 different security television screens. And that's a camera move, right? And it's one really smart move. It introduces the characters. It introduces what's going to happen to them and where we are. And then
it's really sharp too.
Yeah.
Like they cut. It's like it feels meandering, like the characters themselves. Like really designed, like with speed in mind.
Yes, that's a really well designed thing, and it's a perfect introduction into who those characters are. It's very fun, but. Even in those 2 sequences, right, the robbery and the character intro sequence, the actual emotional effect is not the camera move. It's being done through editing in post. So, like for instance, when the actual robbers walk into the I guess jewel factory, whatever that place is,
the jewel factory,
the jewel factory. When the robbery jumps off, that's when editing starts happening, right? And wild editing,
and drums.
Yes, drums and music. So we're getting like staccato freeze frames. We're getting zooms. We're getting spins. You know?
Yeah, and you get like or you get like young Edgar Wright just losing his fucking mind.
Absolutely.
In the theaters.
I mean,
just like. Oh
yeah, exactly. Edgar Wright's just movies. Exactly.
I gotta be this guy.
I have to do this, right? I can do it even better. So in the character intro sequence, a lot of the cool effect that you remember is actually being achieved by speed ramping. Right? So there's a ton of speed ramping, and then of course the most famous thing about it, these fantastic punch zoom freeze frames, right? So and then like you don't think about it, but most of the transitions are like the dumb ones that are in your editing suite because the company thought it was funny. And like Guy Ritchie is the guy who figured out how to use shit like a star wipe or like slide wipes or whatever that you've been...
Or just slowing shit down and speeding it up.
Yeah.
Speed ramps, that was used in some at this time, I want to say like music videos and stuff. Like I'm thinking of like, but it was usually like not cosmetic in the same way. It was usually functional, like as a beat in like where the singer has to like go forward or all the way back and forward in the set or something like that. And they want to speed it up to show time lapse like that. Like it's functional. Here it's like, I'm just doing it so I can like zoom in on something and like give it emphasis because I want to put a loud sound effect on it.
Exactly.
That's like very unique. Even as late as this movie was made, like 2000, which is crazy.
You didn't really see it being done this way before this movie as much. Again, and I can't say this enough. Like some of the transitions here are dumber than Star Wars. You know what I mean? Like the actual tools he's using to get from one scene to the next are dumb. And yet because he's so irreverent about the tradition of film transitions, we buy it and it works and it's fun. And most of his stylistic effects are actually being done in this way, generated through post, not even necessarily planned for during production, but sort of achieved after the fact. Yeah. So I want to go through just a few different versions, like things he does. And
except when Brad Pitt gets punched.
That's the one good one. Yeah, in the water, where he goes in the water.
And it's photographically haunting, is it not? Because the strobe effect on it, it's like you feel like something is wrong. It's actually a very captivating image, and that was not post.
No, you named the one photographic thing that he did that was like really above and beyond in that sequence. But most of the boxing match, which we're going to talk about, is actually standard Brands editing stuff that he does throughout the film. Meaning not necessarily planned with camera, sort of put together more in post. But we'll talk about that. So you're totally right on. So let's talk about the first technique. And this is a thing that happens a lot in films, but Guy Ritchie shows how good of a storyteller he is through this technique, which is simple intercutting. Okay, like simple intercutting is a basic film thing, right? And by that I mean like we have one piece of story that's being intercut with another piece of story, and they're both advancing in a parallel way, and they comment on each other. And this is done all over the time, like all the time in film. But Guy Ritchie is, I think he shows in the way that he uses it in Snatch that he understands it and can use it better than most filmmakers. Here are the two times I'm thinking of. The first one is that music montage when Tyrone is being chased and tortured by Bricktop's thugs is intercut with the hair chase that Turkish and Tommy make with the, I'm going to call them the Travelers because the terms they use in the film are racist. And so I'm not going to use the terms or the accents that they use in the movie. So, but Brad Pitt and his cohort we will be calling Travelers today. So it's intercut, right? And it's a little heavy-handed, but it's so effective at making Tyrone's terror rise to the surface, right? Like when you're watching that rabbit run for its life with those dogs after it, and then you watch, of course, Tyrone being stuffed in a trunk and being pulled into a pit, and it's like, oh my God, like this guy's in very serious danger, and it's a break tonally from everything that happened before that in the movie. Like this movie's really sort of throws death away all the time. Like people die in this movie all the time, and it's very silly and
casual shootings like a Tarantino movie.
Yeah, and they're not gory like a Tarantino movie. They're just like, and then this guy's dead now. You got a bolt in the head. That's it. This sequence shows that he can flip the stakes on a dime if he wants to by using basic storytelling techniques, and suddenly Tyrone's death really matters. You know, and also it's still in tone with the film. It's still raucous. It's still unconventional.
See, to me, that's Matthew Vaughn.
Okay, I mean maybe
what you're saying right now, because that the playful navigation of minimizing death and pain with jokes, and then
you think he's doing
switching gears and then putting it into now you care about this death all over Kingsman.
Okay, that's interesting.
Not in Sherlock Holmes, not in any of that other shit.
I'm willing to accept that on spec. You know, understanding we can't prove for sure, but the fact that Matthew Vaughn keeps doing it, I haven't really seen it much in Guy Ritchie films. Maybe you're right.
Yeah, it's a specious logic. My favorite kind of logic.
The kind that belongs in a podcast.
The kind that is just me talking out my ass.
Yeah. Now, just so that everybody understands, like why I'm talking about the post here and not the shots. The shots themselves are actually not that clearly set up. Like if you look at the shots of the hare and the dog, they're basically on a long lens, and they're just tracking shots. Like we're literally panning with the rabbit, and it's clearly being cut up in an artistic way in post.
And also, don't forget that the music is like,
the music's awesome.
It's like fucking. You're like, oh, I'm so fucking amped right now.
I think that song's called Disco Science. It's a rad song. So Tyrone's shots also fairly functional. They're wide shots. Sometimes they're a little bit low angle, which I think is the one thing that Guy Ritchie likes to do stylistically that really works. He does like low angle stuff, and I dig it. It works. He's not the only one doing it, but he does it well. But for the most part, he's just doing jump cuts to the pieces of that are interesting, and it works. So he uses the same technique, by the way, this intercutting, a little bit later when he shows how the Travelers got their revenge on Bricktop. And that's like pure storytelling, actually giving us all the facts, because a lot of things are happening there. And
it is the stellar sequence.
It's great
in the movie.
Yeah, I totally agree. Like, because it doesn't just...
It's the most memorable one.
That's interesting that you think that.
To me.
Okay. I like that. It's not for me, but I like that you think that. I would say we don't just mop up loose ends in that sequence, which is what it could have been. It could have just been sort of like dotting every I and crossing every T, and then it's over. Instead, we get, because of his intercutting, like a really violent, cathartic sum up of Bricktop. And we hate that guy. I mean, like he's you love to hate him, but he's a scumbag. Like a really hateable villain.
Yeah, he's the worst.
Yeah, he's really bad. And in a great way. Like what a lovable, hateable movie villain. And
he's a unique looking guy, and the way in which he
all teeth.
both unassuming. Yeah, he's all teeth, unassuming, and at the same time, the content of his words are just
filthy.
As fuck.
Yeah, just a filthy, awful son of a bitch.
Just vile.
Yeah, very much so. So we need a satisfying ending for him, and we get it. And we get it stylistically through like the violent cuts and through like that great Oasis track, you know, that goes all the way through the fight. And it's really effective, you know?
Yeah, and it's cool.
It's very cool.
The brand of Guy Ritchie. It's like, look how cool this is.
It's cool, but it's not stylistic just for stylistic's sake. It's cool and emotionally rewarding.
That is very good to point out, because often style for style's sake is cool.
Right.
And that's a distinction we make, but that is not true. That's the whole point, is that you can be cool and meaningful, or at least apt for your story at the same time. So
I also want to point out, he does know when not to use this technique, this like intercutting thing. So we have that car accident piece that's about 2/3 of the way through the film. And most directors would have like the three groups of people in the car. They would cut it in such a way that the accident all happened at the same time. And instead, he kind of does this Rashomon version where we're intercutting the scenes, but what happens is we kind of piece together how all of them were related after we get all three versions of the accident. Right? So like the best part of it is...
This happens in both accidents, by the way. I don't know which one you're talking about, because the Boris one where Boris gets
out of the trunk,
hit by a car.
Yes, that one.
Yeah, but also when they hit Freddy Four Fingers, Benicio Del Toro.
Oh, that's right.
They show their perspective. We do see that he's in the van, but then we cut later and we show, oh, this is how he died. You know,
that's right.
How he got caught.
Right. They do. That's right. They do that. So he does a little bit of like, I guess I'll call it Pulp Fiction, sort of non-linear tessellating moments. And instead of cutting them together in a temporal way, which is what most people would do, he doesn't. And it works. And it makes some moments in the string of events more satisfying, such as when Saul and Saul and Vincent, I think, when they hit Boris the Blade out of nowhere, it's shocking. It's like, whoa, where did he come from? And then you find out, oh, the trunk popped because this other car got in a car wreck. Oh, they got in a car wreck because Turkish and Tommy threw milk out the window. You know, and it's great. It's really, and the order of events makes each of those things surprising, and it's...
We loved this in the early 2000s.
Totally.
We had like Amores Perros and Memento, obviously. Like, there's a lot of non-linearity happening at this time, which is just a thing. I just think it's funny that we just, for no reason whatsoever, we're just like, yes, mess up the chronology of everything. Yes,
I love that.
Is good art. And then like 6 years later, no more of that. We're done.
It might be because our love for Pulp Fiction finally started to fade.
Yeah, as all things do.
Yeah, as they all do. That's right. So now I want to talk about what I think is probably the most memorable thing that Guy Ritchie contributed to the cinematic lexicon in this film, and that is post-zooms. Okay? So post-zooms mean that I'm taking the image that I captured in the film in the editing bay, and then I'm intentionally adding a zoom after the fact to the shot, whatever it is, right? Now, in almost every movie ever, a post zoom is a thing you're trying to sneak into the film. You're trying to usually enhance a camera zoom that didn't go as far as you want. Yeah. Or maybe it's like, I want to add a tiny little movement that feels like a camera zoom because I need something here, but I want it to feel like it was done on the day with a camera. And the reason why is post zooms feel fake.
Because the resolution changes,
and it feels robotic,
so you gets more pixelated.
Yeah, a camera, a lens zoom is a thing that feels like a person with a hand did it. And if you want to know what that feels like, watch every Tarantino film. He does it all the time. Pump zooms.
True. But like in the 70s, some of the more noticeable zooms were done with servos. Like think of the 70s, like Nashville or something like that, where like zooms in at a constant rate. Or think in more recently Django Unchained when they zoom in on Leonardo DiCaprio and he like holds up the wine glass. You know, it's like it's like that style was done by machines in the past. Literally the only reason it feels off, I think, is that you notice the relative resolution change. Whereas optically, you're not doing anything to the resolution. You're just zooming in.
That's true. I think you feel the roboticness if the speed of it is too fast.
True. It can be managed poorly in post.
Yeah, if it's creeping, like a servo zoom feels fine when it's a creeping zoom, which is how it was mostly done in the 70s, where it feels like literally the image is closing in a little bit.
Right.
But Guy Ritchie doesn't do any of that. He doesn't follow any of those rules. What he's doing is actually using it in conjunction with speed ramping, meaning changing the speed of things, and jump cuts, and it feels like he's actually executing a lot of control on the camera, but he's not. He's actually creating a sort of visceral disregard for what he shot.
Yes,
and that is
he's just messing up the place.
It's, I mean, he's with post zooms at least, he's almost like a Jackson Pollock, right? Where he's just sort of like throwing him against the wall, and we get a feel for how this technique's gonna work pretty much right away in this film in the robbery. I think that is like the big tone setting scene of the film.
Yeah, freeze frames.
Yeah,
I mean,
spins.
Those came from like Italian neorealism, the freeze frames and like the narration and stuff. So there's like a coolness factor that he's like, or even French New Wave. I think him watching movies from like the 70s made him go like, this is what cool is. And he like kind of brought it back, but he like mixed them all together. And that's what really feels like
fresh.
He is fresh. Yeah.
Agreed.
Exactly.
So like, one of the things that's so cool about the way he does this in this movie is he actually splits apart all the different elements that normally we're trying to weave together in a film to feel like one experience. He intentionally fragments them so they feel like three experiences at once. That kind of gives you this visceral feeling. So like, again, think of the robbery scene, right? With all that funky bassline stuff going on. And there are three pieces going on there. There's the visual piece, and then there's what the people are saying, the auditory piece, and then there's the music piece, right? And none of them are lined up. None of them are synced together at all. So it's just a sort of shotgun blast of there's these visuals, and then there's these screams that are not people on screen saying them. And then there's the music, which is sort of like, I don't know, I guess thrown over the entire thing. And it feels like this sort of, again, noisy pastiche, right? And the way that he sort of seams them together is through the post zoom. Like that's the thing that kind of makes it feel designed. And it also sort of becomes his trademark in Snatch, because when he gives himself his director credit, it's on a gigantic zoom with a gun on a low resolution image, and there's his directed credit. Right. So it's like, this is what this film's going to be.
He does like proto, I guess 4 years earlier, he does like an Arrested Development joke, which is the joke in Arrested Development, which is I've made a big mistake.
Yeah. I've made a terrible mistake. Yeah.
Because that's done with the aside of a Shakespearean actor commenting about their own situation. Right. Guy Ritchie, how many times in this movie Turkish freeze frames on Turkish and set, and it's basically
here
like,
comes a comment, right?
Yeah, he's just like, and now at this point I'm thinking I'm dead, or at this point
this is exactly what I didn't want to be. Yeah.
Tommy doesn't want to be here. Like it's just, it's like he's just
Tommy.
giving, and so it's like the same joke in that it's like it's not just the idea like of a freeze frame and narration. That is that's not, Guy Ritchie didn't invent that, but like it's this weird like, this is the truth, and then cut to, nope, this is not the truth. Right. That 1-2 punch is actually he doesn't do it for like, he does it for laughs, but because he's not like Mitch Hurwitz, he's not like a funny writer,
not
or
really,
like
yeah.
He doesn't have an actor who's performing at the level of Will Arnett, who can like just manifest a meme suddenly. So he's not working with comedians and stuff, but he has that, and that's, I think, like editing. Sometimes with the stylistic stuff, you really have to have like you have to think of things like a comedian.
Yeah,
You have to
timing.
think of like, how do you break the system? How do I break this? You know?
And he does. And he's really successful. I would say, like, because he so capably uses this technique, it sort of makes the idea of designing an action sequence feel outdated.
Yeah.
Like instantly, it's like, oh, you could be doing this instead of planning your cool shots or whatever. And the funny thing is, it's easier to do it his way, and it's cheaper. Like like this is a much more efficient way to make a film if you want to make an action comedy than to do it for real. And it became the hallmark of digital filmmaking. Like digital filmmaking uses this all the time. It's now a staple. We've done it. You and I have done it a bunch of times as filmmakers at Cracked. Which leads me to like my next, and I think my favorite use of it, believe it or not. My favorite use of it is he does post zooms for emphasis whenever he does split screens. So there's a few times in the movie where you get two people on the phone, right? Which is, again, very When Harry Met Sally, right? A thing you've seen a bunch of times. Now, the problem with split screens is that oftentimes when you're watching two people talk, you kind of don't know what to look at, right? Your eye kind of bounces aimlessly between them. And
my problem with the split diopter shot.
Yeah. And I think, you know, a capable director usually will time the lines so that you know where to look. But Guy Ritchie actually uses a post zoom to control this problem.
True.
And what he does is,
it's like, look here.
Yeah. What he does is he literally, when somebody's talking or when you're supposed to look at one side over the other, he'll zoom in on it. And like, it'll get a little bigger on screen. The other one will shrink a little bit. And that may seem like, yeah, okay, that not that big of a deal. But like, it really wasn't done in films that much. And some of the shots, by the way, that he uses in the split screen, they're not even good. They're like really sloppy shots. Like there's one of Boris's brother where he explains what to do with the diamond, and he's out of focus. Like it's not a good shot.
That was probably looked like back focus issues because they would have seen it. But yeah, it's got flaws. It's
I mean,
run and gun, baby.
That's right. It feels very run and gun. It feels like a run and gun mistake. So like Guy Ritchie deploys this technique to draw our eye, which makes us feel comfortable during the split screen, which makes it feel much more designed. And it's become literally the way that like online platforms do phone calls now. Like when you do something like Zoom or like some other platform like that.
Yeah, that's true.
They use this technique. Like we're going to pump up the person that's talking and the people that aren't are going to get smaller. And like Snatch is one of the first places we saw that.
It's not how I use Zoom. I click whoever's talking. I quickly click on their icon so I see full screen.
No, but you know what? Like if you wanted a passive experience,
I'm just being an asshole.
You're being a delightful.
Yeah. No, it's like a grid. In fact, we've pluralized it. If anything,
right. So, and I think probably the more widely seen version of how this technique is sort of spread into the bloodstream is that if you watch almost any YouTube video, like almost any of them that have been made in the last 5 years, you'll see that they create punch zooms for emphasis all the time. Like they'll like punch in to number one, create time lapses for jump cuts, and number two, to make a thing that's kind of a whatever joke land. Like they do that stuff all the time. It's like kind of the thing that makes a thing feel like a YouTube video.
That's interesting. Are you attributing that to Guy Ritchie's influence?
I'm just saying that this is an early example of that. I'm not saying he invented it. I'm just saying...
That's an interesting thought because I would argue it's reality television that
Which, by the way, he does. Guy Ritchie created reality television a little bit.
He created
didn't create the genre. He created programs for reality television. He did a little bit of that.
I think I know what you're saying. Oh, he did he worked in that. Okay, that's interesting.
That's what I'm saying.
That is interesting. That is kind of like, that makes so much sense, actually. You know, when we talk about like Ridley Scott as like a clear indication of like a commercial director, like I've never, or like Michel Gondry as a pure like music video director, I've never heard a more perfect explanation of someone who does reality television as someone who's like trying to be Guy Ritchie.
Yeah, I mean, that's right.
Because it's constant motion and throwing everything at you until you're like, this is a thing.
This feels good.
This is like, this is it's just a cacophony for the senses, but does seem like it's cohesive, much like, I don't know, reality television is a cacophony of nonsense that feels cohesive because there's like all right, now we have to do the thing now. We have to elect one of you fuckers off the island or something. It's just like, all right,
we gotta throw one of you
going to oblivion.
Yeah, we gotta throw one of you into a couple, then to some sharks or whatever the fuck. Yeah,
it's just bring out the new fucking. Yeah, it's fucking. I have my own issues with reality TV. I don't mean to air that out here. Great. I apologize.
But you're right though.
But it's just, I think and I'm like doubling down on what you're saying. I think you might be right to say that there's like a causal aspect about the birth of Guy Ritchie and the coolness factor of his, like, I don't care, I'm irreverent for the
production methods,
lexicon, editing lexicon that came before me. Not that he was the first punk rock
not at
guy.
All.
I mean, like,
not at all.
Yeah, y'all ain't got shit on Brackage.
Yeah, but
let's talk about Stan Brackage.
But he's a synthesis.
It's drawn on film.
Right.
Yeah, but yeah, it's the idea of this punk rock attitude where it's just like, I don't give a fuck, that permeates his films, and especially in the editing. And I would argue that influenced reality TV, which influenced the thing that you're saying with YouTube
That's
videos.
Right.
That's very, I mean, they're not one-to-ones, but there's something
I mean,
there.
Nothing in cinema anymore is one thing created everything else. But like,
yeah, of course.
I think he is one of the factors. Just a quick side note. Digital punching in is kind of the one of the reasons it became so popular for YouTube is that it actually makes a video much cheaper to make. And the reason is
it's so easy to do.
What's that?
Well, it's so easy to do.
It's easy to do, and like it saves you the trouble of having to shoot it twice because you can actually resize and post, and nobody's like, that looks like shit anymore. Like, we don't have that problem. Like Abe and I, when we used to shoot the YouTube videos for Cracked, we would literally shoot one size of, like, let's say it's Tom Ryman doing jokes, and then while we were there, we would create a second size through a digital punch-in and then intercut, so it looked like we had two shots, but we didn't. We had one shot, and because we didn't want to do the fake punch-ins because that seemed too cheap, and I think YouTube has just subsequently been like, no, there is no too cheap. This is just this is an easier way to do it.
Yeah.
I
made that decision for After Hours. I made that decision at the beginning when I was like, although Justin VR also helped make that. Yeah. He also made that decision. But like, we were like, when we first shot the kind of, the rehearsal for it, we had this idea of shooting, there's 1080p cameras. We authored
at 720,
the first
right?
After Hours at 720, which is crazy. And so you can blame me for that. And the reason is because if you want to manifest that kind of chemistry, you can't do it for 12 hours straight.
Especially overnight.
And that's what we need in order to shoot all those shots.
Right.
And so you should be thanking me. But then, 4K cameras came along and we shot 1080p. But like by that point, YouTube, like it was the norm that like sketches were authored at 4K or at 1080p in the early days. So we always looked not great. But it was done out of necessity.
And nobody really cares when it's done well. I think that's what Guy Ritchie...
They're there for the faces. Well, the jokes.
That's what Guy Ritchie, I think, proves. That's what Snatch proves, at least, is that like Guy Ritchie clearly doesn't think that framing or lighting or even the production image at all is sacred. Like he is willing to violate all those conventions for emotional emphasis. And I think the transgressive nature of that is what makes Snatch so cool. It's like, man, this guy doesn't give a shit. He's doing it, So the last aspect I want to talk about is, again, may seem very obvious, but it's very post-driven, and that is what we're going to call Cutaways and the Soundscape. Okay, Cutaways and the Soundscape, and I think they actually belong together because he uses them together a lot. So Cutaway Gags is basically when, you have somebody say something and you cut to a totally different space for like a 10-second joke or a 5-second joke that's just a commentary and then cut back. Those gags are not new. They've been in comedy stuff since at least Airplane. Airplane used them fairly heavily.
Yes.
But they weren't used a lot in movies. They were used more often in television shows, like especially cartoons, because you don't have to actually create the space, you can just draw it. And then also in like concurrent television shows like Scrubs, or as you said, and definitely probably most famously, Arrested Development, right? Arrested Development does cutaway gags all the time. Guy Ritchie putting them in this movie sort of brought that sensibility into a mainstream film and popularized it. And it also made the movie funny. You know, it's kind of his best joke, is being able to do cutaway gags. And the fact that he doesn't even think of the timeline or the pace of the film as being sacred is another thing that makes it kind of cool, right? And that's, I think, why we only really remember, out of all of his filmography, we really only remember his first two films lovingly, right, fondly. Because he created
like something, he was like at the spear.
He was the tip of the spear
point of something.
And he was sort of the cultural language of digital filmmaking before digital filmmaking was a thing.
That's right.
Part of what made his Cutaways so successful is that he also used what you might call a subjective soundscape, a thing you also didn't see in movies very much. So what I mean by that is, instead of having like a normal production sound or even or score or whatever, he would put cartoonish sound cues and
there it is.
Yeah, music cues that are just like
the C
something
word.
Else. That's right.
Yeah.
That are just there for the feeling of it and have no grounding in reality. Here's some examples so it doesn't seem so abstract. One of the most famous things in the movie is anytime Avi has to fly to London, right? They have that fantastic montage that Edgar
doing a shot.
Yeah.
Edgar Wright.
Edgar Wright did it. Yes.
Did it.
Also.
Yeah.
All the sounds
pulled right from Guy Ritchie.
Yes, thanks to Guy Ritchie. All the sounds in it are funny. They're all cartoon sound effects. And I think that's part of what makes it so pleasing, instead of realistic sound effects. It's used probably most successfully in the boxing match with Brad Pitt, which you mentioned, the last one. If you watch the fight, everything except for the part where he falls in the tank, it's what makes it feel so stylish is that he's cutting really sloppy shots together, but the soundscape cuts music in and out at sort of whenever it wants to, and then sometimes does underwater sounds, and then sometimes does sounds like they're PTSD sounding displaced sounds and stuff. It makes the whole thing feel more than a boxing match could feel, right? There's even white noise whooshes and stuff that are whoa.
Yeah.
And it that stuff was pretty uncommon in film up to that point. Even in television, it wasn't done that much. And it created this sort of emphasis on visceral hyperreality that has now become normal. Now it's normal in films and television.
Yeah, it's the cartoonization of live action, which happened once the democratization of the tools, digital filmmaking. Once the second that we put it on the computer, it was I can be the Simpsons. Not I can draw and make a Simpsons the show, but Simpsons jokes where it's just about timing.
I can just do it. Yeah, it's just me and the camera and my friends, and I can create it.
Those are the easiest things to do if you can construct them correctly. And there's a ton of storytellers out there, and
that's
you're
what right. Happened. I mean, Guy Ritchie, by the way, it isn't working at the digital level when he's doing this.
No.
He just has a grasp on the digital tools that would end up taking over the market and using those techniques and tools more efficiently earlier. That's really all it is.
Well, it's a lack of reverence for the photographic medium, which doesn't mean that he doesn't respect it. It's that it's
not
I'm
sacred.
Not gonna, which is once again the punk rock mentality. It's just that disrespect, those actions that seem like disrespect, but really what it is, it's just you think it has to be this way. It doesn't. That's all he was the one saying that, which is a high praise. But that's true with anyone that's like seminal in the way that he obviously was.
I mean, he was for these two films. Now, I think his post swept away career, he might have lost his transgressive feelings, and maybe he never had them. Maybe they're all from Matthew Vaughn. I doubt it, but maybe. But I think you're right. You summed it up perfectly. Like, Guy Ritchie's legacy is that he found a new way to disregard the reverence for the production image, a thing that if you've gone to film school or made films, you learn it as sacred, and Guy Ritchie knew it enough to know how to destroy it in a new way, and it became the grammar of a generation of filmmakers.
I think it goes even deeper.
I'm ready,
like time-wise, but I think actually if we want to talk about the popularization of it in America and Hollywood, and then the spread of it as it goes over, I think that there's even more of a touchstone. And I mentioned it earlier in the podcast.
I'm ready for it.
The sabotage video.
Oh yes,
Beastie Boys.
Of course, and
that was like 94, and that's Spike Jonze.
Right, he's using a big camera.
And if you look at his catalog, it's early 90s, and if you know where Spike Jonze came from, he was like a scholastic. Like, I mean that. Scholastic video artist. Like, that's where his start was just fucking around with, like, video cameras and film cameras and lights. And he obviously fell right into, like, the musicality of music videos and, like, the speed that is dictated by, just by a single kick drum, and really going back to the basics in a primal way, thinking about editing. When you look at his work, he is doing like a Stan Brakhage or Norman McLaren thing. When you think about it, he has no reverence whatsoever for, you constructing an image in a typical way. He's trying to go he's trying to show you like abstractions of the photographic medium.
He broke 4 cameras.
Doing that kind of stuff. And people have done that for years. He's not the first video artist, but he was a very popular one at the time. And I think that he came out and made like a parody of something that was so ritualistically involved in like TV that it felt perfect. Like, it's also like tied up in the MTV generation of the late 90s and early 2000s with like, you ever just stop and think about pop rock, like pop punk, all those music videos, like the Jackass is like back in vogue right now. That shit is like the same kind of punk rock mentality. Those guys hung out with each other and they made movies with each other. And I argue that like trend, which I don't even know if it has a name. Neopunk.
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know what
Who cares?
The name of it is.
Neopop punk era, but like that generation really did make this like, it's fun to troll in a way, but it's also kind of like stylistically it's cool. And it's like skateboarding videos. There's a lot of Spike Jonze did a lot of skateboarding videos and stuff. So I don't know. I think that because that predates but it was still on like global consciousness, I think that definitely gave Guy Ritchie ideas.
Oh, no doubt.
Doesn't mean that his genius is not on display and taking those ideas and captivating them in a new way, in his way. But I am saying that like the thoughts were out there.
No
before.
Doubt. And nor would I claim that anything I've described here is something that he invented. He didn't invent it.
Yeah, they're two very different things as well.
Well, I think but you're right to compare Sabotage with Snatch. I think Sabotage feels like Snatch in some ways, like the tone of it feels like Snatch in some ways. Like it's very like mocking the thing that it's doing. And also, I mean, like if you want to know how irreverent Spike Jonze was toward traditional forms, he broke 4 cameras making that movie, making that little music video. He broke 4 cameras. So that's a guy who's,
because he's a bad boy. He's a bad boy.
I mean, obviously you can't even make that video now. It's so expensive to do, but at the time it wasn't, relatively speaking. And 100%, it's maybe the earlier landmark, but it's still a music video. And I think that, and
true, there's no narrative sequencing.
Yeah, I think that
it's just music.
Guy Ritchie
and image.
is a step on the staircase of transgressive art forms that has sort of taken over digital filmmaking as kind of the only way that digital films are done. Unless,
Oh
I
man.
mean, only, I'm going to put in quotes, the biggest way, the most normative way that films are done.
Oh man. And it doesn't stay in genre
Right.
either. I mean, we did mention reality TV
Right.
show, but like I'd love to hear arguments against the concept, at least the allusion to, and saying that it did contribute. Like when you look at the Judd Apatow comedy sequence
Totally.
scene where it's like slightly edited improv, or whatever it is, that pacing, that like breakneck speed of joke is entirely influenced by an entire like generation of people who needed a faster edit.
Yep. That's right.
And it's just like, just give us the good shit and just rapid pace, please. Because they're right. They're right when they said like we were like the distracted generation or whatever. Yeah, our speed was a lot quicker than your speed. Olds. We had the internet. Everything was happening faster for us. So, and it obviously still is. So that kind of I don't know, that mentality to me like breaks genre. It means that it's just how we consume content now. It's bigger than Guy Ritchie.
Absolutely.
Honestly.
100%. I mean, it's bigger than any one person or even any group of people
or any movement.
Yeah, it's definitely bigger. But I think, like all movements, there has to be somebody who understood it just early enough to be the face of it or be a face of it.
Yes,
and
that's
he
true.
is. And also, I mean, I think if the prosumer tools had not been like coming out concurrent with what he was doing, it also wouldn't have mattered as much.
Yeah, it did feel like you could get on the ground floor of a movie.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, like when I say that people imitated his work, I did that. Like in 1999 or 2000, I started to learn how to edit, and editing was the first thing I learned about filmmaking.
Yeah, me too. I remember when I was a young kid, I had like, it was called like Studio 400 or something like that. And it came like, it was like zip discs.
Yeah.
Like it like came with a IR reader, like that you plugged in like a dongle. They'd have to point at your camcorder's IR sensor, that little red glass, and they would point and wirelessly transfer the data. That's how you get footage off of it. It was a digital transcode, and like the image was like 240 by 10, like 180 or something like that. It's like the smallest image, smaller than most GIFs. That was my movie.
I mean, I remember using editing for the first time a couple years before this with a program called Media 100. I think it was like 97, 96, something like that. And it was the suite of tools that made it feel like I can now make videos, whereas I didn't know how to do it before. And that's, again, like when somebody who, is light years ahead of you with the very tools that you have access to, it changes your mind about what film is, So, and I mean, now looking back, Snatch is really more of a fun, disposable film than like a seminal work or whatever, but it does show the thing that he contributed to the zeitgeist that matters, and I'll always have a soft place for it, even though, my God, Bricktop is disgusting, like really, really repugnant, and also the racism's pretty rough, it's pretty rough. It's weird that Brad Pitt was allowed to play that character when you think about it, right?
Yeah.
Like,
But his memorable accent does, like, this movie was at the time considered him like the most charming part of the movie.
Oh, 100%.
Like,
yeah.
All the reasons you're naming are the reasons that the society in the year 2000 was like, yes to Brad. For all those reasons, yes.
100%.
That's even wilder.
When you think about it, it's like that should be a reprehensible performance. Like if you're being fair about it. Also, by the way,
Yeah.
can I just say, like, when I talk about Cutaways, like, I can't tell you how, like, subtly important the Cutaways are for Frankie Four Fingers when they keep cutting to his gambling addiction stuff with Viva
that's
Las Vegas.
great.
Not only is it funny,
Viva
yeah, that's a
Las-
funny
yeah.
song, but also what they show of him. It's like he is struggling every time they cut to him gambling.
Mhm.
It's like it's bad for him, and you get all that in like 2 seconds. You know, it's so good.
Yeah, it's like, think of in Arrested
Yes.
Development when they use music, like they bring back All You Need
Yep,
Is Smiles, you know, or like Big Yellow
Yep.
Joint or whatever. They make these non-diegetic music and then just play it for just a split second, pop back. Yeah, I mean, 30 Rock does that. This is old hat, but it's like crazy to see it and be like, yeah, nothing really no one was doing that shit before.
Right. This is one of the first times we did that.
I mean, I'm sure you can find like smaller shows that like had a sequence that did it, but this is like Snatch's bread and butter is literally the cutaway.
I agree. I totally agree. Well, that's it, buddy. I did it, and we did it.
Yeah, you did it. Like that. Yeah, I mean, you're right. I could talk all day about like the influences of stuff on stuff, you know, like that is a very fascinating conversation, but like, I don't feel like it's necessarily warranted because you pointed out a lot of great things. But it's like, it's just a great picture of like where we were at the time. And it's an interesting time because it's literally 20 years ago. And that is always an interesting time to be reflective. Like, we definitely have been thinking about, like, because all time has stopped now, or all history is simultaneous now because of the internet. But so we've been thinking about the 2000s and the 2010s and 90s all simultaneous. But like, I still feel like the early 2000s is like a mine that collectively, like in the zeitgeist, we have not really had out. How horrible. How
many bad films there were.
Was.
Yeah. It's true. It's interesting. This movie is before 9/11.
Yeah, I was just going to say, like, I don't want to bring 9/11 into it. But, like, that's why it's fascinating, is you have movies stacked right next to each other that are completely different era. And I think it's especially fascinating, not just because 20 years ago is the perfect time to be like, nostalgia is going to be rampant soon, but also that's happening now. Right. And that's crazy to me totally too. Agree. To be a part of history, like repeating history in some ways, you know, like with everything that's happening, especially with COVID, like it's just like that is going to change the filmmaking, of course. And we just don't know how that's going to go until someone is like a Guy Ritchie or like a, Spike Jones or someone. Yeah, whatever the next method is, you know, which they are happening simultaneously. There's stuff out right now that's like going to affect stuff for decades
I think things like Titane. I thought Titane was a sort of underrated, important film because I think the idea of doing magical, realistic versions of stories like that is probably more effective than doing the straight drama version, for me at least. That's how I felt about that film. And it gives you license to abandon reality enough to get new emotions, and that was exciting. So yeah, man, I mean, there's people out there doing it. By the way, can I just say, like, one thing that struck me again with this viewing of Snatch that again felt sort of proto-internet is there were several characters that were basically just memes, and they were made as memes. Like for instance, Boris the Blade, right? So Boris the Blade, the Russian, every single time he's on screen, same music cue. And like he rarely has a line of dialogue that you can follow. And he's doing a thing with his head where he's like looking over his nose at you that's so like so much more than everyone else is doing at being a cartoon. That it's like I feel like Guy Ritchie was
he personifies a chicken at one point.
Yeah, like when he's stumbling out with the bag over his head, it's like, what? I feel like that's another way that Guy Ritchie kind of understood how to do a story in a new culture. You know, like Boris the Blade and other characters too, not just him, were very much like, all you need to know about this guy is this sound cue and this look on his face, and that's what he's going to be every time you see him on screen.
You know what other movies he's in?
I know he's a Czechoslovakian actor, right?
He's in The Saint.
Oh, he is in The
Mighty
Saint.
Joe
That's right.
Young.
No, he's Croatian.
He's in He's Eyes Wide Shut.
Oh,
he's
he
in
is in Eyes
Stigmata.
Wide Shut.
Did you know he's in Space Cowboys?
Oh, he's in Eyes Wide Shut. No way.
All of that happened before Snatch.
Yeah, I mean, the actor I'm sure is, and we, as you just showed, has done a lot of stuff. But the character of Boris the Blade, I feel like Guy Ritchie knew how to, like, you get it. He's this. He's like Russian music plus hilarious body language plus looking over his nose at you, and like that's all he is. And like in a film that's like about a gangster pastiche, it's just a bunch of different ridiculous gangsters. It makes him stand out.
Oh, for sure. He's one of the more memorable performances and that's saying a lot. Benicio Del Toro,
amazing.
Brad Pitt doing like one of the bigger, louder roles of their careers, I mean,
and then there's
Benicio has done a lot.
Like the thing with Benicio is
Bricktop is on a next level.
He has so many incredible monologues.
It's so funny that our like Comedy of Errors arc with like Vince and all them. It's like they're the ones that you feel like normal people. They're the straight men, and they're just so dumb. Like they're the dumbest.
But he has the best. He has some of the best one-liners,
which is
yeah. But
I mean, it's just interesting to be like I guess Turkish is really the identity character.
It's his movie.
But other than that, like it really does feel like they're the ones that aren't cartoons, and even they are just these bumbling fools.
I would say Vincent and Soul feel more like real people, but they're dumb.
They're so bad at this.
But like a bunch of these other characters, like Tommy and Gorgeous George, and like and Tyrone, and like 90% of the characters in that movie are memes. Like Tyrone is like big heavy guy with leather trying to get out of a car. That's who he is. Guy Ritchie's so good at that. Like just like here's the scene that's exactly who this guy is.
He's like not even playing archetypes at that point. He's creating
memes. Like legit memes.
I mean, I think cartoons is still the best way to phrase it, but I think memes are cartoons.
Me too. Yes. The reason I'm saying memes is that, again, it's not that he's actually making memes, because memes are different, but like that that these are the things that sort of fed into what is now a way of talking about anything.
You're saying the way in which one of the ways in which we process information now is what didn't exist before, really. I mean, memes did exist before, but in the way that we're doing it is like, video and sound.
Right. A little postcard of who is this thing.
Or a GIF where it's just like, the basic property of editing. It repeats,
right.
And the GIFs can have editing in them. It's just all this stuff is like, we're now talking about a visual language. We're not talking a visual communal language. And I guess, meme is the term.
And like, I guess, maybe what I'm discovering is I actually think Snatch matters historically. I didn't think I thought that an hour ago, but I do think that.
Guy Ritchie, I think Snatch and Lock, Stock definitely shook up the genre, and I think editing wise did set the standard. A lot of people saw it, and a lot of people were like, okay, it's funny, it's dramatic, it's terrifying, it's so many things. It can be so many things, and it's light on its feet in terms of like, it just feels like a new, fresh experience that people went to town with it. So that is artistry, to me. That's very good. Good on you, Guy Ritchie.
Work, man.
Even though
good work then.
Your King Arthur was terrible.
Even though Swept Away happened. But
Mm-hmm.
hey, man, you did it though. Snatch still pretty fun to watch.
You did it.
Yeah.
So put that in your pipe and smoke
Dude,
it, man.
Could you even imagine trying to direct any one of those Bricktop monologues? Like, for real, can you imagine having to like figure out how to get the actor? Like, what if the actor wasn't doing a great job? What if Alan Ford wasn't doing a great job? Because he's an older guy. So you can imagine some world where he doesn't want to be this guy, right? Like,
You're
dead.
That's it.
You're screwed.
That's
He's got to be.
You're screwed. It's casting. The entire thing is casting.
Well, the funny thing is, he was in Lock, Stock in a much more innocuous role, you know?
But he knew he could accomplish that intensity.
That's right. Because, oh, man.
That's how we learn things.
Yeah, God, wow, what a role.
That's why I like working with like a stable of actors if you can.
If you can.
Just learn the quirks. Yeah. Cassavetes style, baby.
I mean, that is a joyous thing. You can see why.
Come over to my house. We're gonna make dinner. We'll rehearse in Greece. I'm John Cassavetes.
I'm just grateful to have ever been cast in an Abe Epperson joint, so that I'm part of that stable now. That's my joy. Yeah,
I make you a zombie though. I always make you a piece of shit.
Well, one time, if you remember, we did the Game of Thrones writers' room where I had a lot of lines in that scene, which I shouldn't have, but I did it.
See, in order for me to get through that, like I had to think like in my head, okay, for Adam's character's comedy to work, everyone has to hate him. And he's like, he sucks. Like, that's the idea, right? That was the sketch's point, that you sucked, not Joffrey or whatever. The fucking Game of Thrones sucks. That's what sucks.
This has been a Small Beans endeavor. We're a bunch of pals who make podcasts, sketches, music, web series, and movies. The Beans always have new ideas percolating, so make sure to check us out at patreon.com/smallbeans. That's patreon.com/smallbeans, where you can browse all of our current and past content, see what we've got planned in the future, and learn how your support can help the small beans grow into huge, giant monster beans. If you enjoyed this content module, please like, rate, subscribe, or tell a friend about us. We love you!